Hey folks, welcome back to Brus segment here on Chris Wyatt Reports, or the Wyatt Independent Network, with Byron Shepherd. We did this last month. We took a bit of a hiatus there with all the stuff going on in both our lives, but we had a session last month and we're back again. Well, Byron, I don't know why we're bothering to meet. I mean, nothing is going on. I mean, nothing of note in America or in South Africa. Although I hear in Springfield, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people in Springfield. That's the last I heard.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that I liked Tom McDonald before you even knew who he was. But, you know, what can I say about him?
You liked Tom McDonald before I knew who he was?
Damn right.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember when I got to know who Tom McDonald was. I do know that a viewer told me about him a few years back. And not everything is my cup of tea, but he's got some really good songs. He puts all his heart and energy into it. Why are we talking about Tom McDonald? Anyway, but seriously, well, we got Karen Babst, Marcia, DK, Veritas, Aquinas, and Gray Man became members. Thank you for that, folks. Well, keep it up. Keep coming here. Appreciate you all being here. So, Byron, wow. Since we last did this, a lot has happened. Donald Trump is ensconced in the presidency, and it's a new world order. Definitely. Trump's actions are bringing liberty and freedom back to the world, not just to America. Keir Starmer is he's dumping in his nappies now, actually said that the UK will back off of its persecution of people for social media posts and imprisoning people for their speech. I don't know that that's going to happen, but that comes because the UK is fearful that Donald Trump will place tariffs on the United Kingdom, which I find funny because the only thing we get from the UK these days is Paddington Bears. You know, there's nothing else coming out of there. So what do you think?
Pretty much. So there's actually a couple of things just I want to talk about just before we get on to the main video, because I can already see it in the comment section from, you know, keyboard warriors. I made a video, Chris, on the whole Donald Trump thing. And in it, it was a 20-minute long video. And in it, I referred to probably around 5 seconds the refugee status, or refugees. I said something like, Donald Trump is offering refugees to go to the US. Now, Chris, we can be technical and we can say, okay, well, refugee versus asylum, we can say it's different. And I did say that he was offering asylum. Now, there's a reason for that, because when it comes through to the American psyche and even the British psyche and even the South African psyche, most people understand what asylum is. Very few people understand what refugee status is. Okay, yeah, we can look at that as a specific, and we can sit there and say, you know, refugee status is outside the country, asylum is inside the country, right? That's the very basic way of explaining it. Is any of this relevant? No, none of it is relevant, because it was a 20-minute long video, and what I did in that video is I split up all the rationale that Trump is giving for imposing his rules. Let's call it rules, because we still don't know what's being offered. We don't know what this refugee status is going to look like. We don't know what this asylum status is going to look like. We don't know what any of it's going to look like. And all the hopeful people wanted to basically be free economic migration. And I'm here to tell you what I'm sure Chris will agree with you. It will not be free economic migration. I don't see that happening. It's refugee status or asylum status or something. We don't know what the rules are. And I have no doubt that there will be some kind of rules, because otherwise it would be a floodgate scenario. And no matter how big the US is, 7 million people just rocking up is going to be difficult. I'm sure, Chris, even you'd agree. So they're going to have to process.
I think it's going to have to have some. I think it's going to be easy as we kick 30 million criminals out of the country. We'll have plenty of room.
Well, but the reality is, Chris, you know what? You and I will have a long discussion about it when the rules have been released. And so a lot of people can say that they're upset with me or angry with me or whatever. Like people, if they want to be upset by the content, I've got a lot of people post your content into my chat sections and so forth. The reality is we don't know what the rules are. And when you look at it, most people, from a media perspective, interchange the words asylum and refugee status, because most people don't understand what a refugee is.
Correct.
But they understand what asylum is.
Well, so they think they understand asylum.
100%. 100% agree with you on that. 100% agree with you. And that's why I did a posted comments on it to all the armchair lawyers. I am a lawyer. I know how people work. I know how they talk. And unfortunately, most people don't understand the differences between them. There are some differences. To a degree, they're also majority kind of similar. To a degree, you can be a refugee and not an asylum seeker. You can be an asylum seeker and not a refugee. That there are differences, but ultimately, the rights conferred in the long term, pretty much the same. You're in a country for a year, you end up with a green card. That's effectively it. It's just, what does their first year look like, and what does the migration look like? They are very different approaches, and the statuses that they confer and the expectations are very different. So, regardless, 20-minute video, 3-second comment, refer to it once, and I think everybody forgot what I was actually trying to claim with the video, which is when you actually look at the rationality of the United States and why they are doing this, the arguments from the United States are actually very easy to understand. And all I did is I gave screenshot upon screenshot upon screenshot upon screenshots of politicians and the vitriol that they were giving online. And it was very difficult to say that what they weren't doing is basically proving Trump's case.
Yeah, a lot of people came to my video, Byron, and said that Byron's telling people that asylum, you won't be able to get to America for 4 or 5 months. I said, I haven't seen his content. I know what he's talking about. But if he's talking to you about asylum, then he's wrong, because this isn't asylum, it's a refugee program. But again, I didn't see your video.
I didn't say that.
I know.
I did say I'm saying I'm relaying the rules weren't available.
Right, third hand. That's the problem. So last night, I had people send me panicky messages in WhatsApp groups when I'm trying to get to bed, and they're like, is this true? Is this true? I'm like, what's true? The Americans have put an alert for travel for South Africa. It just went on the website. That's horseshit. That travel alert, level 2 travel alert, has been on the American website since November 7th of 2024, and it's tied to the increase in kidnappings taking place in South Africa. Now we just had this little 9-year-old girl kidnapped in the Eastern Cape, and a little Muslim girl, color girl, and they just got her back, thank God. Enan Fatima, I think her name is something like that. But that's what that's from. But the problem is that's very easy to resolve. It just takes a moment to look. All you got to do is click on the alert instead of taking screen captures and then spreading them all around and getting people in a tizzy. That's what my videos have been trying to do to dispel. So I'm not here to rubbish other content creators, but I am here to tell you there are content creators that are intentionally misleading people and lying to people and don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, and that's problematic. When it comes to what we're talking about, I've told people in my video, you're a lawyer. In America, essentially, there's really 4 categories of people we're talking about here. We have a migrant, which is a temporary legal person entering the country to perform work, typically farm workers in California picking cabbages and maize and things like that. Or South Africans who come to America on the H2A, I think it is, visas. They come
so for
here.
those of you who don't know what that is, it's like a 6-month visa that allows you basically to work on farms. But obviously you're sponsored by a farm to do farm work.
Exactly. And it's all over the country. So, and we've had over 100,000 South Africans who participate in that program in the past 20 years. That is a migrant. The people in the media who say the migrants, they're kicking the migrants out of America, that's bullshit. These people aren't migrants. They're criminal alien invaders who violated sovereignty. That's a migrant, what I just explained. That's legal. You were invited here. You have a visa. You're allowed to be here for a period of time to perform work, and then you get out. That's how it works. That's a migrant. Then we have immigrants, people who want to come to America and become Americans, or at least get a permanent residency, live and work here, and hopefully prosper. Now, people come here out of the blue. I'm from New Zealand. I want to move to America. They apply. Well, you have to meet certain standards. Or people win the visa lottery program, which is the dumbest freaking thing we ever had on the planet, which every year we take up to 50,000 immigrants from countries all over the world and say, but you can come here. Now, they draw your number, you get to come here. That's immigration. Immigrants come here, they get no help. They get nothing. You don't get any home placement, you don't get community placement, you don't get job placement, you don't get a stipend, nothing. That's that one. So you got migrant, immigrant. Then you've got asylum seeker. An asylum seeker is someone legally, by definition, I have the legal definition from the U.S. law, immigration law right here. And the definition is someone who is in America, who is seeking asylum because they're persecuted or fear persecution for a variety of reasons. Sexuality, political affiliation, ethnicity, language, religion. Perfect example, Mikhail Baryshnikov. Soviet ballet dancer, comes here to do a show, The Nutcracker, on a Soviet tour during the 80s, and goes, runs to the police and goes, I asked for asylum. He's legally in America. He feels persecution or is being persecuted in the Soviet Union. We look at his case and he stays here. As an asylum seeker, he cannot work. It's illegal. Although the Biden administration illegally granted permission for millions of criminal alien invaders who were fraudulent asylum seekers who demanded asylum outside this country, and they let them in to work. That's not normal. That's not happening anymore. And then you have refugee program. The refugee program is a humanitarian, overly generous program in which the United States takes people from conflict zones primarily, but not exclusively, all over the world, or people being discriminated against, like the Uyghurs in China, the Rohingya in Myanmar, people in Venezuela and Haiti. They come here, and it's a resettlement program. The federal government oftentimes pays for them to come here. That isn't always the case. Brings them here. Some places, people are coming from Darfur. They have no documents because they're all destroyed and their village was burned. So we issue travel documents in some cases. We don't know what's going to happen.
Sometimes they throw the travel documents over on the boat, like we see in the United Kingdom.
Of course. Well, those are fraudulent ones. Those are fraudulent asylum seekers. But genuine refugees that we get engaged, that we bring here. So we don't know what the rules are going to be for South Africans that want to come over here, and people need to stop speculating until the facts come out. But anyway, so that's 4 categories of people. So I understand why people beat you up on that. It's comical. I mean, that guy tried to attack me because a few years ago because I told a story about when I was in Liberia and people ran like cockroaches, and he's he called black people cockroaches. Never did it. That's your fantasy. Anyway, so don't sweat it. I'm glad you explained.
Okay, I get that. If I may, I think your audience will like us. I just got five comments I just want to address very quickly. First is Valerie Cooper. Stop picking on Byron. We all make mistakes. I didn't make a mistake though. So I had a very, very specific reason for saying asylum. And that's because that's what the majority of people understand. Most people understand when we talk about going abroad and seeking some kind of status, whether it be refugee status or asylum status. The words refugee status and asylum status are often used interchangeably in the media. They are legal definitions, and so I didn't use it in a mistake. Why? Because I don't know what the rules are. I still don't know what the rules are, and neither does anybody else. So how the US actually interprets these and what they offer to the South African public remains to be seen. So very difficult for me to say that. And I will comment on it when we know what the rules are. But at the moment, unfortunately, they are what they are. If you've seen the rules before me, Chris, I doubt you've seen the rules. But if any of you have seen them, feel free to send them over to me. The next is ARTRC. I don't know who that individual is. He says, Byron, people are reacting emotionally and facts are missed or misinterpreted. And actually, the reason I want to respond to that comment very quickly is purely because a lot of people have very, very hard feelings about their countries. A lot of people want to immigrate, and a lot of people are looking for an easy way out. Now, that's not because they're actually suffering any form of direct persecution, but because life in South Africa is hard. Right? It is hard. And so a lot of people think that if you immigrate for whatever reason, whether it be to Australia or New Zealand or wherever else, they think that life is going to be a lot easier for you. And I've got to say, and I'm sure, Chris, we spoke about this on our own terms. If you go to the US as a refugee, let's just assume that the rules are really simple and you can get there. It's going to be hard, folks. It's not going to be jump on a plane, go over there and have a jolly old time. And that's why I want to stress what most people want is free economic migration. This is not economic migration. Right? It's going to be tough. Bear in mind, we also don't know what the South African government is going to do as a result. So if you think you're going to come back and like see people in your house or see your family, that's not going to happen.
No, you're not going to anyway, because as a refugee, you can't return to your country of origin because in theory you were being persecuted. Why would we let you go back there until at least you're an American citizen? Then it's different.
100%. But even when you are, I think the South African government has said very clearly that what their response is going to be is any individual that gains American citizenship through the refugee status, they're stripping those individuals of their status as a citizen in South Africa. That's what the South African government has preliminarily said they're going to do. Now, whether they'll be allowed to do that due to constitutional court cases that basically say if you're born in a country, you can't be stripped of it, don't know.
Well, it also violates international norms. You can't strip and make a person stateless. That's not allowed. South Africa will come under sanctions from legitimate countries if they try to strip people's citizenship for being a refugee.
100%, and I would agree with you on that on all fronts. But you and I both know that when it comes through to the ANC, they just make the rules up as they go along.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, after all, they've redefined the word nil. I mean, I keep looking it up in the Merriam-Webster, in the Oxford Dictionary. It means zero. But apparently it doesn't mean zero to the ANC and the DA. They don't think it means zero either.
Well, that's a different conversation. And I watched your video on that.
It's their press release. It's their press release, not mine.
So the next comment was Play24 says, how do I get 7 million number? Well, because there's like 7 million whites in South Africa. And you may say, okay, but what about 7 million Afrikaners? Let's just be clear on something. Define an Afrikaner. The Americans don't know what a freaking Afrikaner is. In their head, they think white people. That's what they think. Give me a good definition of an Afrikaner that an American court is going to be able to apply independently and uniformly to any individual. That it's going to be very tough. Very, very tough. So what do they actually think? I think they mean they think they mean white people. There's 7 million of them.
I think they mean ethnic minorities. I think minorities are being persecuted. That's what's going to come down to. That's what I said within 10 minutes of announcing this on Friday night. And they've kind of put something up on one of their announcements, which really doesn't tell us much, except it focuses on minorities who are being persecuted. So we'll see. And in that case, it would be 1.3 million Indians, 6 to 8 million coloreds, 4.8 million whites. And next thing you know, you got a bunch of people.
And I don't think they mean the Indians. So that's why I say, okay, you may look at it and go, well, what do they actually mean? To be frank, I don't know.
Well,
I honestly don't know.
We don't. And it's undefined. As Rumsfeld said, it's a known and unknown.
So, but you and I both know, if this goes to a court of law, you basically have to have a definition. And define an Afrikaner. Don't know. So, and there is actually quite a lot of people online basically saying, I'm an Afrikaner. Okay, I'm a colored individual, and I've got a parent that's this, and this parent's this, and I've spoken Afrikaans for my whole life, and we grew up that way. Are they an Afrikaner? Technically, I suppose you could argue that they are. They speak Afrikaans. Got to be fun. Got to not be funny. Some black people that only speak Afrikaans. Are they Afrikaners? Don't know. So.
Well, let me jump in real quick, Byron, because so we end this. This is look. Byron's not saying he knows what an Afrikaner is. He's trying to make the point from legal distinction what the Americans will identify as an Afrikaner, because it will have to be identified, and that's the point I'm making too. Great. Lots of people can claim they're Afrikaners, and that's why I would have done the executive order differently and would have said persecuted minorities in South Africa, and then later define who those persecuted minorities are, because that's much easier to do. So you can say that, well, for instance, the Basotho group from the Free State that feels persecuted is not in this category because we don't see that, or the Portuguese who live in South Africa qualify. Even though, so this will be defined. People relax. We're just trying to make the point here. Yeah. Byron is, and I agree that the definition is undefined by the U.S. government. It doesn't matter what Wikipedia, what ChatGPT, what you decide, what the government of South Africa decides, what I decide, what Byron decides. We don't know because no one can know until the U.S. government defines it. They might say Afrikaners are anybody who's white in South Africa. Well, that's not true. You got 2 million English speakers. Byron's not an Afrikaner, okay, but he would fall under that definition. So we have to wait and see. Take a breath. All right, you had 1 or 2 more comments you want to comment on.
Yeah, so actually coming back then to that comment that you were making right there, right? So even when it comes through down to refugee status, so let's just say refugee status is usually that you feel persecuted, which means what? So in the South African context, it's very interesting to actually read the actual words that Trump said. He said people were having their property being confiscated by the government. He said there was land grab. So I assume, and I acknowledge it's an assumption, I assume that at some point he's going to have to put something in there. Like I say, you're going to want to avoid a floodgate scenario because it will overwhelm services in terms of processing. So is he going to do something and say, well, if you've had your property expropriated without compensation, you can get refugee status to America?
Well, that's a good point, but he has opened the door up to a wider audience. This act about expropriation follows countless government policies designed to dismantle equal opportunity in employment, education, and business. So anybody that was denied a bursary to go to UCT would qualify. Anybody that was forced to sell or give equity to people would qualify. Anybody that was not promoted. 100%. So that's the barn door is open.
100%. And you know what? I actually agree with you entirely on that. And that's actually, for me personally, all of that, very interesting, because how would you prove it? And it would be very difficult to tangibly prove it. Do you even need to prove it? Could it just be nothing more than an allegation? Don't know. I'd really love to see the regulations.
And that's going to be the challenge. And also remember that the people that you interview with who are determining your refugee status or not and granting it, they make that determination, and that could be arbitrary from your perspective, because the law, U.S. law, either for asylum or for refugee status, says persecution, you can prove persecution, or the fear of persecution. So here's a perfect example of fear of persecution. I'm gay, and not me, but you're gay, you're in Amman, Jordan, and they're dropping homosexuals off the roof of buildings to their deaths. That's a legitimate fear. You're not going to have to prove that you were dropped off a roof. But if we wait till you've been dropped off the roof, it's a bit late to help you. So in that case, we'd give refugee status and let the person come to America. It's the same situation potentially in South Africa. That's why the barn doors could be very wide open. But I don't think a lot of people numerically, as a percentage of South Africa's population, are going to take this offer up. That's just my thought. I know some people will. Thousands will.
So, interesting enough, the people that I think that are most likely to actually take this offer up are going to be people there on the visas already, the temporary work visas. I actually think those people are going to take the offer up, personally.
Yeah,
because they're already used to living in America.
Yeah, those who've done it who are in South Africa, because you can't apply for it in America. I've had several people who are here right now on a visa saying, Chris, can I apply? No, you're in the United States. You can't. You're not being persecuted. This is an immediate threat to your life and limb. That's what refugee status is about. People have to remember that, because a lot of Burikis now get there in their mind, well, this is my golden ticket to get out. And it may very well be your golden ticket. But the golden ticket isn't because we like you or dislike you or we want to help you or not want to help you. It's because of our democratic system of governance. When someone's life is in peril, we feel an obligation to help them. We don't always do that. Let's be honest about that. But we feel an obligation. Therefore, we have a program that if you are in jeopardy, mortal jeopardy, we help you escape. That's how we get the scumbags like Ilyana Omar in this country. That's how she got over here as a refugee. So keep that in mind, folks. Keep that in mind. And that's one reason why you can't go back. At least not while you're in the program, unless it's rare exceptions. Rare exceptions.
So actually proving everything that we've just said. So Jack says in the comments, he says, life is hard everywhere, but when you're racially discriminated against for over 3 decades and have to think about the future of your children under these race laws, no matter how much you love South Africa. So exactly. So in our definition, what we're saying, does that class of refugee status? Because it's self-perceived, right? So you could say racial laws.
Well, there you go. 142 racial laws. You don't have to prove it. Exactly. It's a floodgates. With the 142 race-based laws, anybody discriminating under those laws can simply make the case, and any legitimate, cogent person would be inclined, I would believe, to say, you're right, you're being discriminated against. You don't have to prove to me. You have a fear of persecution because you even if you haven't been denied a job, you don't even bother to apply because, what's the point? So, yeah, this is look, but people need to take a breath. Take a deep breath. And also stop watching News 24 and ENCA and SABC getting lawyers on that don't know their butt from a hole in the ground. Honestly, listening to the video on SABC the other day of lawyers going, this will take months and South Africans won't be able to qualify. They don't know what they're talking about. There's nothing out there. And they're also conflating asylum. So take a deep breath, folks.
Maybe so. But the reality is we're all speculating on what we think might be the rules.
Correct.
Like, even when I'm speculating that I think that logically Trump doesn't want a floodgate scenario, put in a caveat. I say that as a lawyer. I wouldn't, as a lawyer, suggest that you ever have something like that because it would just screw you royally. With that being said, is he going to take that advice? He may not. Maybe he wants all 7 million people there. I don't, honestly, mate, I don't know. But what I can do is I can comment on the rationality of what he says in terms of the why he's doing it. And what he says is that he's saying, for the reason of the why he's doing it is because of all the race laws. And then people say, well, there aren't any race laws. And I address that in my video. And it's like, well, actually there kind of are. But you see, what the government attempts to do is to say, well, actually, there aren't race laws, they're redistribution laws. So, Chris, if I kill you, is that murder? If I shoot you in your face right now, is that murder?
Well, I suppose if you've been
yes or no?
historically disadvantaged, it isn't.
Well, no, just yes or no.
Of course
if I shoot you in the face,
of course it is.
Okay, cool. What if I dress that up as I'm culling people because, there's too many people on the planet and we need to save the environment? Okay, if I still shoot you in the face and I say that's the reason why, is it still murder?
Still murder. There's no justification for it.
Right. So when you understand that basic thing of you can justify things all you want, but it's still murder, then you have to say things like, and this is what we're finding with the ANC government. You see, it's not expropriation without compensation. It's not land confiscation. It's redistribution and equitable redistribution because of historical injustices. Hang on, bud. Are you taking my property away and giving it to yourself or someone else? Yes or no? The answer is yes. Okay, that's expropriating without compensation. That's theft. Yep. Right? The same as race laws. When you turn around to Elon and you say, right, Elon, you have to give 30% of your company away to a previously disadvantaged individual, a black individual. And he says, well, that's racist because that's racial profiling. And they go, no, it's not. It's equitable redistribution because of historical injustice. It's still racial profiling.
And of course, in that case, when it's foreign direct investment, it makes no sense whatsoever. It's morally bankrupt because there is no historically disadvantaged person from Elon Musk bringing $400 million into South Africa to start up Starlink. It's created from American wealth and from America, not from South Africa. And nothing was taken. You're just stealing. That's the bottom line here. But let me just address something really quickly. People are quibbling and arguing in the chat here on videos. That's what people want you to do, folks. Chill out, relax, enjoy, sit back, smoke your cigar, have your cigarette, drink your chibuku, drink that piss water known as Castle Lager, whatever you're doing right now. Kick back, take your boots off, chill and relax and listen, because this is what they want. Look at the propaganda. Today, we got a so-called immigration expert for an immigration service on the toilet paper of record, also known as the Independent Online, telling people that you don't go to America. They're evil towards minorities and they hate foreigners. What a crock of horse shit. I can tell you thousands of refugees and thousands of asylum seekers and thousands of immigrants who come here. We treat immigrants very well. We don't have a problem with immigrants. We have a problem with criminal alien invaders. The same way that Gate McKenzie and Herman Mashaba have a problem with criminal alien invaders from Zimbabwe and expect them deported. That's no different. Why is it we can't have our sovereignty, but South Africa can? So we don't have a problem with immigrants. This country is made of immigrants, including the Native Americans. They came here over the Bering Strait in repeated waves. We're all immigrants here. So at least our historical, our ancestors. And we also don't have a problem with, hang on a second, we also don't have a problem with minorities. That's a lie. There'll always be bigots and racists. The world is full of stupid people. But that doesn't mean America is evil towards minorities. And oh, by the way, that's dumb logic anyway, because presumably, the people we're talking about are mostly white people are going to come here, and America's mostly white, and apparently systemic racist. Why would we hate white people coming here? Wouldn't we be thrilled that more white people are coming here and less people of color? These arguments make no sense. Don't listen to them. Take a deep breath. Go ahead, Byron.
Okay, but that in itself actually it raises actually a very different question, and it's a question that I've been struggling with for like 2 weeks. This idea that everybody's, there's South Africans are immigrants. I can trace my ancestry in South Africa to 1750. I know people here, and they'll say that they've got more claim to the country because they're black. They can't trace their ancestors to their freaking dad, let alone anyone else.
Well, 65% don't know who their father is, unfortunately.
Right. But a large amount of black individuals migrated to South Africa from West Africa. Right, during the Bantu migration. That's a historical fact. I'm not saying that. I'm not making the claim. So, don't remind me, because that's the claim Ramon made, and he got pulled up in the media, but don't remind me for it. That's on Wikipedia. Go read Wikipedia. They will tell you about that. And they'll say, where did you come up with the word Bantu? Wikipedia. I read it on Wikipedia. So before you remind me, Wikipedia, right? But these individuals will claim that they have access or they have ownership of South Africa because it's West Africa. And yes, of course, they walked the equivalent distance of London to freaking Beijing, but it's the same place. So logically, it's theirs. It's like the equivalent of a German person marching to China and saying, well, I have equal claim to China because it's all on the same landmass. Even though to get there would be horrendously long and it would be freaking far. But if a German person suddenly claimed that they were Chinese, would we go, well, yes, because you're all on the same continent, you're all on the same landmass? Or would you laugh at that and just say, well, that's absurd?
Well, I don't know,
the South
Byron.
African concept is not.
I like the argument. I mean, by this logic, County Clare in Ireland belongs to me. The islands of Frisia at the north side of the Zuiderzee belong to me, and half of the Danish peninsula belongs to me in Jutland. I'd like reparations and restitution and of all my land from my ancestors who were kicked out of there. Also, I would like slave reparations for my Irish ancestors who were sent to Barbados as slaves and bred with African slaves to pick the sugar cane there. So I want my reparations. I want my land reformation. This is stupid and silly. There was a conscious decision that was made at CODESA, the Convention for Democratic South Africa. The agreement was that no land claims go back before 1910, the Union of South Africa Act. I know people are now saying 1913. Well, that's the Native Lands Act, but it was actually the Union of South Africa. There was no South Africa before 1910. They were colonies, African kingdoms, Boer republics, British colonies. There was nothing. So it didn't exist. The concept of the Union of South Africa came up in 1910 with the British Parliament passing an act. So that was a reasonable, prudent decision. And now we hear the nonsense going back 350 years. Well, if you're going to go back 350 years, let's go back to the day that herders crossed the Zambezi River into southern Africa and then tromped on down and pushed the Khoisan San in what is now Zimbabwe off towards the Kalahari. And you can't deny it. The rock paintings are there from 50,000 years ago in the Matabele highlands, in the hills and caves. And then they came down and they bifurcated, going down through the Free State and going down the eastern side of the Drakensberg, populating South Africa. If you're going to go back 350 years, let's go back 1,600 years. This is ludicrous. You have to pick a point in history, and it was a prudent decision, which is being overturned now for political gain by people who find favor by dividing South Africans. It's stupid. It needs to end. But it takes rational people and adults in the room, not those wearing nappies tossing their toys out of the pram.
Yeah, and so one of your comments here, HROD Wolf, says, I'd like to live somewhere where nothing is assumed because of my races. I suggest...
that doesn't exist, unfortunately.
Yeah, I suggest Antarctica because the reality is that all across the Western world, race is an issue. Every single place. In Australia, they currently have riots because the Maoris say that you stole their land, give it back.
Well, Aborigines is the term they use there.
Sorry, the Aborigines, whatever.
Because you're gonna get sharp shot on that. The Maoris in New Zealand.
I'm gonna get remanded again. Okay, so the local indigenous people of Australia, apparently they're more indigenous than anybody else, and you're finding this with the Maoris in New Zealand, even though they conquered New Zealand. And so they were native from there.
And they're also the people, not only they conquered New Zealand, but they virtually wiped out all the flora and fauna. They destroyed all the Kiwis and the Moas. They wiped them out. And we're told how evil Westerners are about the environment, but we forget about the Pacific Islanders who had far graver damage to the Pacific Islands. Anyway.
Yeah, and so but there's a big thing there. I mean, if you read any of the news, apparently they got parliamentaries doing the haka in there and screaming their head off like banshees at other local politicians. And this is in the media all the time. I mean, in Australia, they've got this big thing now where they tried to pass a law that basically said that Australia had to acknowledge the previously disadvantaged individuals because of the white colonization. They had to refer to all Australian land as being stolen. They had to teach that. And every day in schools, they had to acknowledge that. That was a law put forward by a Labour government in Australia. So when you talk about race relations in South Africa like it's suddenly new, I'm not being funny, mate. Have you seen California lately? Freaking hell. Like some of the race stuff coming out of there, it makes South Africa look tame, positively tame, right? They've got the same problem going on in England right now. I could tell you some of the court cases going on there, and some of them were we could sit here for hours and we'd laugh our head off because some of them were frankly ludicrous, but they're going forward. And so this idea that we basically could go abroad somewhere and race wouldn't be a factor. Have you tried Mongolia?
So your points are very valid, but I think the point that's inartfully being made here by someone is that what they mean is that they won't be discriminated and prevented from getting jobs and access to universities based on their skin color. Now, until recently, you were discriminated in America if you were from the majority population. Affirmative action is racist. Affirmative action has been the law of the land by the federal government for over 5 decades, and it has done grievous harm to blacks, whites, Asians, and all Americans by discriminating and skewing the situation. And by the same token, if you want to be employed by the federal government, if you're a minority, you got points for advantage. If you're a veteran, you get points. I'm a combat veteran, disabled combat veteran, and I think that's wrong. People know you should deserve special treatment. No, I don't think I deserve special. I deserve equal treatment, but not special. I'm not a special class of people because I served in combat and defended the Constitution and protected your rights. You should be polite to me because I did it, but that doesn't make me special and give me an advantage. But right now, if I wanted to get a contract with the government, it's pretty easy. Well, not now because Doge is ripping all the contracts up. But before Doge started, I could get a contract very easily. I could put together a business here. It would be a minority business because I'm a disabled veteran, which qualifies me in that minority category, even though I'm as pale as freaking Santa Claus. By the way, folks, someone called me SEAL Team Santa last night, so we made a new image, and that's going to be the new nickname, SEAL Team Santa. But anyway, yeah, so you're always going to be judged by them. But the good news in America is that reality and common sense are returning. DEI is being thrown out at the federal level. It's disappearing in corporate boardrooms finally. This stuff is on the retreat. but you have to continue the campaign. You can't stop midstream. When the Germans decide to be stupid and take Stalingrad and instead of pushing over the Volga and going on beyond that and just leaving that place surrounded and starving them out, they made a huge mistake and they lost the war. I'm not saying I'm in favor of the Germans winning that war. I'm just saying that was a huge strategic mistake or operational mistake. You can't make a mistake against DI and wokies. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep pushing until they're exterminated from public discourse. They're not part of it. And so we've got to keep this up. But now, if you come to America, you will not be hired or not hired based on preferences, based on your immutable factors. That's what was going on, but that's being wiped out. But you're always going to be judged. I mean, no matter where you go, people are going to make assumptions. People meet me in America, they make assumptions about me. When people find out that I used to breakdance, they're like, what? And when they find out that I listen to rap music, like, what? Yeah, I grew up in poverty with no electricity, and I went to an outdoor privy at minus 20 degrees. You don't sit down on the seat, trust me, because you stick to it. And fetching water for sister, like, what? Well, that's because you made an assumption about me based on my devastatingly handsome good looks because I'm a white guy. Anyway, you know what you say about assumptions? Yeah. Anyway.
So one person also says here about feeling safe in the US, and I think the chat moves. It says, but basically they said that they did. Yeah, here you go. MJ says, to be honest, I experienced racism in the US, but I didn't feel unsafe like here. It's not like the racists there will shoot you; they are just rude. And I gotta say, and I always get criticized for this, and so I'm going to clarify this and say it's my personal opinion. So I'm not expecting anybody to share my opinion on this. I personally believe, having lived in a number of countries in the world, that your personal safety is quite often subjective. You feel how you want to feel, and a lot of the time people go to foreign lands and they naturally assume that they're safer, and so they just go, okay, I'm safer because reasons, and there's no rationality. But a lot of the time, it's not that they actually are safer, they're just less knowledgeable. So they don't actually necessarily understand the danger that they put themselves into, and they don't prep for it because they assume, well, naturally, it's not South Africa, therefore I'm not unsafe. Now, I must say that obviously I live in South Africa and I don't feel unsafe, but then I have precautions and I feel very safe. Saying that, I go to London and I still have my house in London and I do visit there. I feel incredibly unsafe in London, because I have no ability to provide myself with any form of protection. I'm reliant on the government. And there's a lot of people then that walk around London and say, I don't know why you feel like that. Why would you feel more unsafe? And a lot of it comes down to, let's call it like knowledge. Like you can self-perceive yourself to be in safer environments and therefore you just feel safer. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you are in both an unsafe or safer environment. Sometimes it's just lack of understanding. And sometimes when you're in a foreign land, it's like easier just to assume that it's safer. And you see this a lot also with tourists that quite often get taken advantage of. And
yeah, sure.
what I mean, there's plenty of tourists that come to South Africa and just go, oh, it's safe, and then they get shot on the beachfront for having their phone in their hand, right? So it's like, but that always holds up true. So this perception of safety, I want to re-highlight and say it's a perception, in my opinion, before anybody shoots me for that.
Well, your point's well taken. It also explains why so many Karens and Biancas in South Africa, white leftists, run around and distort the argument saying these people are liars. This is a safe country. Well, they live behind huge walls with guards and security fencing, and they have opulent lifestyles and domestic servants, and that's their life. But that's not the life of 4.8 million white South Africans or 6 or 8 million coloreds. That's the life of some people. Other people live in Northwest on a farm that's been attacked 4 times, and they have to go on patrols at night without pay to protect their farms. And oh, by the way, they protect everybody's farm, not just the white guys. The black guys got farms too. They protect them. So everybody's experience is different. I will say that I have never really felt unsafe in South Africa, but then I'm not your average bird. I'm an intelligence officer with counter surveillance training, with counterterrorism, personal safety measure training. I mean, I've done training where I've fired 500 9mm rounds at a target arm's length away from me in an afternoon. You want to talk about something cool to do? Go to the range and targets pop up and try to grab you an arm's length away and shoot at them. And, given a car and taught techniques on how to evade being blocked in and ramming cars and all this stuff. So, I mean, as an counterintelligence guy, I'm always looking over my shoulder because the world's full of bad stuff. But that's unusual. So I've the only time I've been in jeopardy. I've been in harm's way a couple times in South Africa, but I was in greater danger in Liberia, where we were loved just because of circumstances at an Akon concert of all things. But even there, I wasn't in fear of my life. But there are differences. I mean, when I worked at the War College and still in active duty, I would come home late in the evening and I would leave my keys in my front door absentmindedly because I'm doing things. And it happens several times, but there's no danger someone's going to come here and break in my home or walk in my front door. I don't leave my door open, but I could. I could leave my car unlocked and nobody's going to steal it. We don't have that sort of crime where I live. But if I lived in Chester in East Philadelphia, I'd have triple deadbolt locks on my door and, and wire mesh and bars on my screens, just like people in South Africa. But I don't have it here. It's all a matter of perception and also circumstances.
And it's interesting that you say that, because where I live in South Africa, I'll be honest with you, my keys never leave my car. I sleep at night, my keys are still in the car. And the car's outside.
Oh, man, okay. Next time I'm there, I won't have to do a hire. I got it covered.
Absolutely. Right. So anyway, Wade says in the comment section, Wade G says, I'm used to having my firearm, but that won't be the case in the States. Well, actually, it probably will be the case in the States. You're wrong.
Why would you say that? We actually have gun rights. We have the Second Amendment. This is a concealed carry state, open carry state in Pennsylvania. You can carry firearms here.
So, but for me personally, I'm also used to carrying my firearm. I'm very used to it. And that's actually one of the reasons I feel unsafe in London, coincidentally. Because when I see people kicking up crap, I have no means of defending it. In fact, I can't even carry with me a self-defense spoon. Because fact that it's illegal. Your spoon can be classed as a dangerous weapon because you have the intention to use it for the purposes of self-defense. Therefore, it's a dangerous weapon. You can get arrested for it.
The monarch of London, Khan himself, will take you to jail if you have a knife. It's crazy. Let me address something in the chat real quick. Lee Friend Blingdonk said, another content creator said that on her podcast that there's no white genocide. Let me address this very quickly here. The phrase white genocide is a phrase that was bandied about by people trying to draw attention to rural insecurity, which is how I define it, plus mod farm murders, many, many years ago. It was picked up by the media and they repeated to tarnish and rubbish concerns about safety in the rural areas, and also to falsely claim that white South Africans only care about white South Africans. They think they're special and they're more important than other people. I rarely see people doing that. It's usually not people who are educated or well-informed or know what they're talking about. So there's a video out there now that someone's put up, and it takes a video of a brutal farm murder and then a video of someone who's in America who claims to be South African and says the government is behind systemic murders of whites in South Africa. Well, without offering any evidence. And the content creator rightly points out that there's no evidence of that. You're not producing any evidence. And then goes on to rubbish the whole concept and then tries to claim that Ernst Roots and Kali Creole are talking about white genocide. I've never heard either one of them say either of those things, even on the Tucker Carlson.
I've got a very, very, very detailed answer of this exact comment, and so I'm going to try explain it to you and hopefully.
Well, let me finish my thoughts on it.
Of course,
okay?
Go for it.
So the content creator is claiming that those two people are saying white genocide. They're not. This is just like people saying now, trying to rubbish the expropriation on compensation. Well, there is no expropriation. Well, there is expropriation with compensation. We've seen it. There's also misuse of the law to pressure people to take away their land, like in the Ocar Land broderie. So that does happen. Now we're also saying, well, there are no invasions. That's a lie. Sesheho in Polokwane proves otherwise. We have the digits, we have the electronics, we have people admitting they've done it. So now they're saying there's no widespread land grabs. This is always moving the fence post, always moving the goalpost, trying to rubbish things. And it's the same thing with the white genocide. The people saying it are the media, by and large. The people saying it are those who are uninformed. And to attribute to people who are legitimate, who are trying to provide a service to their constituents, is illegitimate and immoral. I would suggest that people stay away from the term genocide, because genocide is a very specific definition. That's the problem that South Africa has with the case against Israel. It is not a legal definition of genocide, and it distorts and pollutes the picture. So stay away from it. If you want to use the term genocide, there is one place where it's legitimately applicable, and that is the cultural genocide of the Afrikaans language by the ANC. That's a whole separate issue. Go ahead, Byron.
Okay, thank you. So actually, there's something in there that you said that I smiled at when you said it, and actually it comes down to the definition of genocide. So the first point is define genocide. So we can say, okay, well, what about white genocide in South Africa? Right, great. That's a great idea. The genociding of a people, because of the way the genocide is often framed, is usually the mass wholesale slaughter
The eradication of an ethnic group. That's the intent to eradicate.
And the way that it's portrayed by the media is that basically we have to have the army there as if it was like, I don't know, some kind of World War II thing with Germans putting people in concentration camps and then putting them in the incinerator. Okay, but you got to understand that a people can be genocided without violence. So I will give you an example. Jews were genocided in Spain many, many moons ago.
Inquisition.
Do you know how they genocided them? They forced them to convert to Christianity. Yeah. That's how they genocided them. There was yes, a lot of people did get killed, and yes, there was a lot of people that were slaughtered for their beliefs because they refused to convert, but there was no like wholesale erasure of them so per se. They made them convert. Well, that was genocide.
There was a genocide against the Huguenots when the Edict of Nantes was revoked in 1590 in France.
Cool. So then now we've already identified something. A genocide doesn't have to have the wholesale slaughter of somebody. All it has to do is have the erasure of somebody. Okay, now that we completely understand what that means, let's then talk about what's actually happening in South Africa. Number one, the white population is in decline. Fact. All you need to do is read the statistics. Read the statistics on any government data, and you will see that the white population is in decline. You could legitimately make a claim that what that means is that white people are being erased. Now, the rationale for the erasure could be lack of economic opportunities. It could be that people are going abroad because they feel persecuted by rules, race rules, or whatever else that may be. But the reality is that the number of white people in South Africa is in decline. Now, some politicians celebrate that. So, regardless of how you look at it, you could claim that we are attempting or we are seeing the early stages of a genocide. In other words, an erasure of people. Because let's use the example in Zimbabwe. There used to be in Zimbabwe like 300,000 whites, and now there's like 10,000. That is an erasure of people. With enough time, there may be 0 white people in Zimbabwe. And at that point, that's a genocide of people. Technically, it's the complete erasure of a people. Remember, genocide doesn't have to be at the barrel of a gun. Now, when you understand that, then reinterpret what is going on with the Afrikaans language, and that is the erasure of the Afrikaans language. But Afrikaners define their culture by 3 things. Number 1 is their language. Number 2 is their family. Quite often it's Dutch reform. Number 3, it's their historical narrative. In other words, what they consider to be the covenant with God to have the southern tip of Africa. If you remove one of those, the language, do you erase the Afrikaans people as a whole? Many Afrikaners would say yes. So how do you erase a people? Well, what you base or erase their language? Make it pointless for them to speak it. It's what they used. It's what they did to the Jews with Hebrew. That's why Israel had to reinstate Hebrew as a language, because basically nobody could speak it anymore.
It was nearly extinct.
You know why nobody could speak it? It was an extinct language. You know why? Because you didn't need it. Where was I going to speak it? Can't speak it at work. Can't speak it in the. You don't come.
It's not in government documents. It's not taught in schools, and that's why the Bella Bill is so dangerous. But not just for Afrikaans speakers, but for Xhosa, for Tswana, for Zulu, because they're 100%. forcing 94% of the population whose first language is not English to go to primary school and be taught in English on day one. That is wrong. 100%. We've got the data. We can see how damaging that is to kids, whether they're Zulu or they're Afrikaner. That is wrong. You should be taught in your first language, whether it's Welsh, it's Gaelic, it's Scots-Irish, whatever. You need to be taught in your first language, and then you can be taught the second language introduced as you start to learn the concepts of reading, writing, 100%. Arithmetic.
100%. Now, when you understand the actual definitions and the way that many of these intellectuals, Alan Roots, for example, use the word genocide, now turn around and say, oh, but there's no genocide. Yes, if we say the wholesale slaughter of people where it's at the barrel of the gun, you might say, yes, that's not happening. But there are processes in place to eradicate or erase Afrikaans culture. That is a fact. They don't want people speaking the language, and they tell you honestly, they say, well, we don't want people to speak the language because, it excludes certain people that don't speak it, and then that would be problematic. Then they erase their history. I said the third reason for them was the covenant with God, where they have a claim on South Africa. Now they say, well, you don't have one. There's no covenant with God. You guys are invaders. So shut up and sit in your corner and stop talking about your history, because your history is one of repression and it's this and that. Okay, well, now the Afrikaners have no tie to their culture. And we've all seen a decline in basically Dutch reform. I mean, that's a global thing, the decline in religious observance.
Heathenism is growing the world over.
Right. So what is there left now to call? Why would I call myself an Afrikaner? I'm an Afrikaner on paper. Within 2 generations, in one generation, my family will grow up speaking English. They'll go to English schools. Within 1 generation, apathy will set in, and they will never speak Afrikaans again. If you ask them who they are, they'll say South African, and they won't even know what an Afrikaner is. That's wholesale. That's erasure. That's erasure of a people. Yep. In which case, genocide.
Yeah, that's why I make the distinction. I use the term cultural genocide because the language they're attacking. There is a clear definition under international norms of what genocide is. That's why the case against Israel is bullshit. It doesn't meet the terms. There's no effort to wipe out the Palestinians as a group of people. They are Arabs, and there are millions of them in Israel proper. 2 million Arabs living in Israel and who are Palestinians. And there are millions of Palestinians living in Jordan and other countries in the region. Folks, I'm going to ask the people freeloading, 821 people here. The way people find out about this broadcast, especially live, is when it's live, if you interact, and we've got a very high chat rate, that's 23, that's excellent. But either like or dislike, preferably like the video, but some of you are freeload, 800 people and just 337 likes. The more you interact with the like button or the dislike button or the chat comments, the more the algorithm picks up a surge and goes, ooh, wait a second, something's going on over here. And they start putting it up on, hey, for you when people pop up on YouTube and recommending the video. So if you want more people to know about this and hear more about the conversation, help this channel grow, which has been under massive shadow banning for a long time, which he somehow punched through recently, please stop freeloading. You're not paying for the broadcast. You're getting these, you got an attorney over there, and you got me, a guy that's worked in foreign policy at the highest levels around the world, and we're offering information, insights. You don't have to like it. You can disagree with it, but you're getting it for free. So hit the like button.
That was easy.
It ain't hard, brother. Anyway, help a brother out.
Yeah, and so ARTIC says, I'm way too unemotional and logical for South Africa. But I think, at the end of the day, you have to be slightly logical and unemotional on these things. Chappie says, let's help Chris get to 100,000. So I got to 100,000 recently. Thank you, everybody who obviously did subscribe to my thing. Yes, it would be great to get Chris to the same level.
And by the way, when Byron took over full operation, because Byron was there, he was behind the scenes, and he came in front of the camera with Ramon, but Byron's been there from the outset. But when Byron took over full responsibility for Morning Shot, as I recall, you were at 53,000 subscribers or thereabouts just a few months ago?
Yeah. That's right. And then I've basically managed to double that without Ramon. Now, I don't really like to talk bad of Ramon. I know Ramon personally. He's a friend of mine. He's gone off and he's done his own thing. But I've got to be honest and say, and this is nothing I'd say I wouldn't say to him directly. But I personally believe that I made Morning Shot great again. And it's done actually a lot better without Ramon than it did with him. So sorry, Ramon, but that's life.
MMSGA. It sounds like monosodium glutamate.
Pretty much. So I made Morning Shot great again. And there was a comment in the comment section that said, "Well done on my first single. Thank you so much." I released a single a couple of days ago, which was a single based on all the comments that I get of people that are just moaning like hell in my comment section. It was kind of funny. So if you've seen that, great.
Did you do like a folk song or something? Are you joking? What are you talking about?
No, that's a genuine thing, man. Did you not see it? I'm sure I sent it to you.
Okay, I'll have to
I released a 4-minute song of basically my chats of people just talking absolute nonsense. So it was really good.
I'll have to check that out. Yeah, that's clever. Yeah.
There you go. Gerard said the single was insane. Yeah. Thanks so much. I thought it was good. I spent a bit of time with it, and then I sent it to my wife, and I was like, "Hey, check this out." And she was like, "How long did that take you to make?" I was like,
"A long time." A long time. Well, it's like the video that I play all the time. Somebody made last year with my mind's going blank with Joe Biden. That was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, that video. Yeah. So, well, all this aside, and thanks for people being here, and thanks. We managed to guilt people into hitting that like button, and the chat rate's gone up even higher since I moaned about people not hitting the like button. But Donald Trump has got the leftists around the world in full panic mode. I've told people, I said, as far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure there's a playbook, there's a binder like the football team. Okay, it's the first quarter, day one. These three executive orders, this action, this public statement, that's going to piss them off. They'll focus on that. So no birthright citizenship. Let them burn their legal dollars fighting that in court, and we'll move on to the real things like firing people in the federal workforce. And we're doing this day 2. Day 3, here's what's on the agenda. There's clearly what's going on in the White House. There's no way that they're simply just coming out with these things are written ahead of time. They have a playbook, I'm sure, that's lined out for the first 90 days, and the left doesn't know what to do. It's like the Thriller in Manila. It's like the Rumble in the Jungle. Muhammad Ali is bobbing and weaving, dance like a butterfly, sting like a bee. The left is in complete panic. They're running around here, Byron, in the States. I don't know if you're catching the news, and they're screaming about, Donald Trump is stopping foreign assistance. Oh, really? You think it's okay to give money for playtime transgender school books for kids in Peru? That's a good thing? How about the people living in tents in North Carolina from a hurricane 5 months ago? Or the people who have nothing to go to in Los Angeles because it all burned down because this. Anyway, so yeah, they want to die on that hill. There are real hills to die on, but that's not the one. So anyway, it's I think the left is in full lost mode.
So, Chris, I just need to respond to something quickly. So, yeah. Michael Detroit says, my companies in jeopardy have been taken by black people as I must give 51% to a black person. Michael, honestly, bud, go call up Sakhalicha. Go call them up and tell them your predicament and ask for assistance. Right. You might find that sometimes a lot of these rules are placed, especially around licensing criteria. They basically they suggest that you must do these things, but sometimes and quite often there's no legal basis. And when you actually get appropriate assistance, suddenly without warning, the stuff is just what can I say? It just disappears by magic. So, Michael, if that's a genuine story, call up Sakhalicha, tell them Morning Shot sent you. I'm sure they'll help you out. No doubt. They'll help you out.
Yeah, there's a lot of grabs by people that are illegitimate. People try to take advantage of things and people don't know better, so they got themselves in a bind. Like what's happening in Polokwane, it's the Shecho, where these people just walked out and demarcated lines and put themselves in charge and are handing out plots, all of which is illegal. The expropriation, even though you can do it without compensation, doesn't allow that. Only the government. But what's really scary about the expropriation thing for me, Byron, is the following. It's not just the national government. It's the provincial government. So someone like Panyazi Lesufi can expropriate anything they want and claim it's in the public interest and make an offer to you, and then you reject it. So they go to a court that's appointed by those people who owe their fealty, or they pick an arbitrator who owe their fealty and their salary to the government. So you're powerless. So, and then it's also at the local level. So the mayor of PE can come along and make that argument. And if people think this won't be abused, they're living in a fantasy land.
No, and there's some people that have obviously already highlighted the potential pitfalls. Very quickly, Article says I need to work on my Afrikaans before my refugee interview.
I'm giving Afrikaans lessons. I have a book here if you'd like to learn.
So I've already got like 4 different citizenships. And this is actually one of the things that I always have to highlight to people. I don't live in South Africa because I have to. I literally have 4 other citizenships. I can go live anywhere I want. So I live in South Africa because I want to. So it's not because I have to. I don't have to live here. I want to live here. I like living here. I was born here. This is my country.
Well, I live in America because I'm an American, and you could take that to the bank.
Well, unfortunately, buddy, we all have our crosses to bear, as they say.
Hey.
But coming back to the property expropriation bill.
Yeah.
Now, for me personally, the issue with the property expropriation bill is, property. That's the issue.
Exactly. It's not land. That's the problem, and that's the issue.
Not land. It's property.
Pension funds, Krugerrands,
Firearms.
flats, firearms, buckies, flats, houses, you name it. Intellectual
Your
property,
business, shares,
intellectual property, trademarks, all of it can be taken.
And you see, this actually, once you understand the stuff that's going on there, right, and then you look at some of the bullshit legislation going on in these morons' heads, then you're like, okay, right, let's say, for example, you may recall a couple of years ago they wanted to change the firearm legislation to remove self-defense, which would mean you'd only be able to have a firearm if it was like for some limited things. Then on top of that, they also wanted to limit you to like 4 firearms, and you had to justify what they were. Many hunters have way more than 4. Right. So as a result, now you got to do, you got to basically have what you guys in America call a buyback, except South Africa doesn't have any money. So now you need to put a rule in place that basically says, I can expropriate your firearm without compensation because it's in the public interest. Right. Now, let's say, for example, Juju comes in and bless his black little heart. He turns around and he says, right, I need to expropriate the mines. And I can't afford to pay for those mines, but I need to expropriate them because then I can use the mineral wealth for the benefit of the country. That's his rhetoric. Now, expropriating the mines without compensation is in the public interest. So you can expropriate the mines. Now you want to take back the Reserve Bank. You want to renationalize the Reserve Bank, but you don't have the money to pay for it. Well, I can expropriate it. It's in the public interest. You see, these... And I'm not talking about things that are, look at the NHR bill. What about all the funds that are currently being held by all of the relevant fund managers, Discovery and whoever else, right? That's my money that they're effectively holding on trust for me. Well, what are you going to do with that money? Cool. Expropriate it because it's in the public interest, because it's going to be used for the purpose of NHI. So when you understand that, do you know how many post offices have closed because they can't afford to pay the rent?
They're all closed. There is no post office. South African Post is bankrupt.
No, there are still some open because they're basically used for the purpose of the SASSA grants these days.
Right.
But do you know how many have closed? Do you know how many have closed?
2,500.
For no other reason than they can't pay the rent.
2,500.
Tons.
Yeah.
Tons. Well, now all of a sudden, expropriate it without compensation. Because it's in your best interest.
Right. Take it from the property owners who you're renting it from because the post office needs it because the postal delivery is a public good. Yeah. You see, this is the whole problem with all this stuff. And let me get back to the Ocar Land brewery. So I'll interrupt you for a second. That whole story, which was run by Propaganda 24, claiming that there was no expropriation of the Ocar Land brewery. They're trying to downplay what's going on. But that's misleading, dishonest, simply disingenuous. What happened there was these guys had a game ranch in Limpopo, and the 2 guys owned it. They employed dozens of people. People went there on vacation. They enjoyed the place. It was doing well. There were claimants to the land who claimed that their ancestors owned it. They were historically dispossessed. But we're not talking about, if I'm correct, claims from 1910 forward. We're talking about from 1800, 1700s, which is not a legitimate claim. But anyway, they filed a claim. But that's not what this was about. So a coal company, Coal for Africa, headquartered in Melbourne, Australia. Look it up. They're there. You'll find them. And their current board is comprised of 6 board of directors. 3 of them are Chinese nationals. Need I say more? That coal company wanted to prospect for coal on that land. The owners of the property said, no, we don't need you disrupting our wildlife here. There's giraffe and Cape buffalo run around here. We don't need that. So the coal company, of course, approaches the government. The government says, okay, we're going to expropriate your land. They come to them, give them a letter, and offer them a pittance for what it's worth. And I think they offered them 20 million rand. And they said, no, we don't want to sell. So then they issued an order of expropriation, which was in effect immediately or on the Monday. You have till Monday to get out. On a Friday, they got the letter, and they had no money for attorneys. Fortunately, Afriforum jumped in and spent 800,000 rand. So who's going to have money if they start doing this all over the country? 800,000 rand for legal fees. They were able to stop the expropriation because it wasn't legitimate in the courts. But now the handwriting was on the wall. So the owners, knowing that they were coming after them again, plus you have claimants who claim that their ancestors own this land and they're going to get it back, they went ahead and sold. They sold to the coal company for 80 million rand. So the newspaper, News 24, is claiming that, well, there was no expropriation. They sold it, and they got 4 times what the government offered them. This is the point. It was their land. They were using it for a purpose. It's theirs. It's not moral to take it. If anything, you can make the argument that the claimants have a basis for claiming it. Certainly not some coal company. That's not in the public interest. Not to strip coal and ship it to China, because it's not going to the power plants in Limpopo. It's going to China. So they sold the land. Well, guess what? The land was never explored or never used for coal. They defraud these people their land. Yes, they got 80 million rand, but now their property is gone, their business is gone, and all the people who work there don't have jobs. And so now the coal company owns the land. They don't dig any coal out of it. They sell it to a Saudi prince. Now a Saudi prince lives there. So how did that help the black people that live there? It didn't. How did it help anybody? It undermined the economy, and they sold out to foreign interests. This is shameful. Look up Coal for Africa. They have a new name now. It's MV, something like that. This is all true. This is the abusive power of the state to go after a property because they're connected politically through patronage to some private company that has Chinese nationals on it based in Australia to profit them at the expense of South Africans. This is what has and will happen. That's with expropriation, with compensation. Imagine the horror show coming, the Brazil-like movie coming, the 1984, the Alistair Huxley. Look what's coming your way when it's expropriation without compensation. Take that, Ocar Land, and manifest that throughout the country. The entire economy will be destroyed by this nonsense. And we're not even talking about land grabs. We're just talking about the government misusing it at the national, the provincial, and the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay doing this. Watch out, folks. It's going to get really spicy.
Yeah, look, I think it may get spicy. I think that it's all going to get, it's going to be very interesting to see, because already Cyril Ramaphosa today in his speech said, well, I'm not actually after the whole land removal. I'm not after removing people from their land like the apartheid government did. So that's not what he wants to do. However, there is a fundamental issue in the expropriation without compensation issue. And that is, you may recall that Julius Malema, when he was debating getting Section 25 of the Constitution amended, he basically said that all land in the state should be owned by the government. And that was one of the reasons he didn't actually like the amendment bill, right? Okay, so the reason that is all important is because a lot of people misunderstand actually what the issue is. So let's use the example of when the government talks to you about stolen land. Do they actually mean that you went and stole the title deeds? No, right? No. So what they actually mean is that the land is owned in a capitalistic fashion, because you see, underneath a Marxist fashion, there is no such thing as property rights. Everything belongs to the state. And you see, their problem is that we live in a capitalistic system whereby we have this thing called private property ownership. So when they talk about theft of the land, the original sin is that we live in a capitalist system and private property. That's the original sin. Forget white people, forget the property you're on, forget what happened 400 years ago. They don't want there to be private property and a capitalistic system. They want it to be a communist socialist system. They tell you that very clearly. That's what the EFF stands for, socialism now. The ANC believes it through the National Democratic Revolution. So when they talk to you about stolen land, do they mean that your title deeds for 135 Acre Street is stolen? No. But you got title deeds to 135 Acre Street. And there's title deeds to everything in the country. And they don't want that. They don't want private property ownership. Full stop. Now, once you understand that, then reconsider the expropriation without compensation bills and the acts and whatever else, and ask yourself, would people who don't want you to own private property misuse and abuse the legislation? Because if you say no, you're an idiot.
Well, and let me put this in further context. Why would someone want this other than craving political power and the ability to pilfer? It's more than that. It's also a cultural aspect. Throughout Africa, everywhere I've lived in West Africa, in Central Africa, in East Africa, in Southern Africa, it is the norm for peoples of Africa, multiple groups of peoples, that land is not held by individuals, but it's held in common, typically by the chief or headman. And the chief or headman decides who gets to use what land to graze their sheep, their cattle, their goats on. And if you fall out of favor with the headman or the chief, then you're shat upon and you're ostracized and you're pushed aside. You can't use the land. And they can take it from you at any moment with no justification whatsoever in many cultures and societies. Others, they have to go before something like a khutla and consult the elders. But the bottom line is you're powerless. You don't own anything. You have no recourse. You can't go to a court and say, the chief took my land away. Now I have to run, no. So in Ghana, it's a perfect example of it. One of the major problems, impediments in Ghana in settling and improving the economy beyond oil extraction, because there's actually agricultural potential there. They've got cocoa, many other things. One of the problems is that a lot of the land was held in common by chiefs, local chiefs. And there are thousands of chiefs. And so you could farm a piece of land, and the moment that, your daughter was 15, wouldn't sleep with a chief, well, guess what? You don't get to use the farm. They kick you out. You're destitute. So that's what they want. The EFF in particular and MK, they want to be the chief. Zuma sees himself as a traditional chief in his mind. He's the chief. He decides just like Mugabe, his magnanimity of letting you do things. He decides. Baba's the person. He's the one responsible for you. And that's the worldview they have, because they want that kind of power to decide, because they're coming from a different cultural viewpoint, the people that are behind this. That's a big part of this that's being overlooked that people need to pay attention to. And don't tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. None of you here in this chat, maybe one people, have lived anywhere near as many places as I have in Africa and experienced as many different political systems as I have. So I've seen it. I've been there. I've got the receipts for it. And I'm telling you that's part of my analysis and my assessment, my considered analysis of why this is a problem. And the concept, the Western concept of property, deeds, title, market-based capital, collateral, is antithesis to what these communist socialists, and they glom right onto that because it fits very well with a communal chief leadership model. That's what they want. Look at what the EFF has been arguing: nationalization of mines, banks, everything. They want to control everything because they want to control it. But they're not competent. They're not competent. Why should they control anything? I would never trust government to run anything. Anyway, there you go. So that's my thoughts on that one.
Yeah. So look, a lot of people in the comment section have talked about title deeds. So you see, the ANC actually is now being forced by law to issue title deeds to a lot of individuals. So
to the RDP house. The RDP houses now.
That's correct. So they are now being forced to do that, and so they are drastically more property owners than ever before. But you see, it suited their narrative not to issue these, because whilst they were not issuing title deeds, they could say, well, 80% of whites own the land. Well, that's not true. It's just you haven't given the title deeds to the individuals that have land because reasons. However, there's a couple of things I just want to address in this quickly. Number one, okay. So, number one is that the way that the actual article or the whole point of stolen land is framed, and it's framed like it's framed like stolen land, because they know the concept of colonialization and apartheid and white people having land and whatever because of historical injustices. They know that that is an emotive topic, so that when we talk about stolen land, what most people think of is they think of Rupert Murdoch's farm. Right? What they're not thinking about is what they really mean, which is stolen land means that all the land is under private ownership, and they don't like it, okay, because they don't like property rights. However, it is 2025, guys. You cannot have a modern economy without property rights, regardless. And even the ANC knows that. So all the people that are like, yeah, yes, South Africa, hot, boring, something is all going to go to shit. No, it's not. Because in 2025, even our morons in government know that you cannot have a modern economy where you just steal shit blindly and it goes into a socialist hellhole. That's not going to happen. However, does that mean that they won't attempt to do, let's call it opportunistic expropriation, where something that might be suiting their interest, and by their interest I mean their personal interest? If you think they're not going to do that, you're stupid. Like they did that in Zimbabwe. Like if you look at a lot of the farms that got expropriated, they got expropriated by like Mugabe's guy, who's a general in this thing, and he happened to like the farm down the road, so he tried to expropriate it so you could go live on it. And so one actual individual said, how's it gone in Burkina Faso, where they've had expropriation there? And that's a very good question, because you see, what tends to happen is when you go and you ignore the modern global standards of law and order, societies go into complete cuck. And the big thing that's going now in that territory is that they've got massive, what the media even quotes as extreme violence. Now, when the media starts calling things extreme violence, you know you've got a problem. Right? And they've got extreme violence and a huge rise in militants, and the economy there is basically non-existent, and before you know it, they're probably going to have refugees going to the country next door. The only problem is the countries next door is a shithole as well, so there's no point going there. And the reality is, all of this started with a lack of respect of things such as property rights.
Private property rights.
When you start to ignore law and order, and you take law and order and you say that it means nothing, don't be surprised at what the ramifications of that are.
Oh, it's
and to a large degree
collapse. It's economic collapse is what it is. You can't. I mean, look, we don't need to look any further than we have historical examples of the Soviet Union. It didn't work, and the horrors that happened there. We also see the horrible example of this trying to do this in Cambodia, and more recent example of Venezuela, complete destroying a modern economy, relatively modern economy, and turning it into the Stone Age by violating private property rights. By the way, South Africa is a signatory of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the National Party and then by the ANC.
Which guarantees
private property rights. That's right. And it also is sacrosanct in Section 25. And you can sit here, not you, Byron, but the ANC and the apologists on the left and the white leftist liberals can sit here and try to convince me all day long that nil means compensation or that nil is just and fair. It's not. And Section 25 is very clear. And pay attention to paragraph 3 or 4, the last bullet, and where it says that land is not the only form of property. It's not exclusively land. So this is pretty frightening. It doesn't work. You're going to have a disaster. So let me mention something here. The RDP houses. I've been talking about this for years. The South African government has intentionally kept what I call dead capital in play. In other words, you have billions of dollars worth of property that cannot be used because the government retains ownership of it in RDP houses, among other things. So why do they do this? To keep those people dependent on the state and ingratiated and feeling obligated to vote for the ruling party because it gave you the land and it can take the land and the house away from you at any time. So it also supports the narrative that only whites own land, because all these black folks who are occupying land don't own it legally. The state does. So that also supports the argument that whites own all the land, which is horse manure. They own a significant portion, but 0.019% of white South Africans own farmland. That's less than 2% of white South Africans. We're talking 95,000 in 2017. That figure has declined dramatically since 2017. 95,000 white South Africans own farmland out of 181,000 farm owners. That's in 2017, the government's own statistics. So this is all really, it's a mess here that they're misleading people. So they want them dependent. They want to support their narrative. And here's the thing. Why would you care about capital? Why do you want a title deed? As I've said 1,000 times, if I'm an aspiring young black South African and I live in Mariko in an RDP house, and there's no shops around. People have to get on the bus. They walk, 2 kilometers up to the Bakwena Highway to get on the bus to go to Rustenburg or to go to Zeebrugge the other direction to buy groceries. And I want to start a tuck shop or a spaza, but I don't have any capital. Well, if I own a house, an RDP house and a little plot of land, I could go to a bank. Now, it's not a guarantee I'm going to get a loan, but I have capital now that I can pledge as collateral. That's collateral. So that if I don't pay the loan, they can take it, they can repossess it. So the bank might be willing to loan me money, and then I can borrow money to start my business and have a decent business plan, and I pick the right spot, and I have success, I will succeed. But when you don't have collateral, and the perfect case for this story is look no further than Peru. Peru was an absolute disaster. Peasants lived everywhere. They didn't own any land. Then Peru had land reform, and it issued title to the people who were on the land, and they had capital. And it was an amazing experiment in capitalism, proving once and for all, 1,000th time over, that communism, socialism doesn't work, but free market capitalism is the best system humanity has devised to raise people out of poverty and improve living standards. You can even see it in communist China where they eased up, and look what happened. Look at Vietnam, how it's flourishing now by taking some free market concepts into it, even though it's state controlled still. In the case of Peru, the country took off like banshees. And here's the other thing. You get rid of the tragedy of the commons. When it's the commons, like Inganyama Trust, and you don't own it, you don't take care of it necessarily because you're not going to hold on to it. Or you have Zimbabwe 100-year leases. It's not yours. It belongs to the state. If it's yours and you can give it to someone on your passing, they can inherit it, you're going to maintain it. You're going to take care of it. And we all profit from that. So this is intentional for the narrative that whites own all the land, to keep black South Africans especially dependent on the state, and also to prevent them from becoming successful. Why would the ANC not want black South Africans to be successful? Because they don't care about black South Africans. They care about cadres, and cadres only. The wealthy, connected, elite, privileged people, the 500,000 people who are the core constituents of that party that they put in positions in government and in corporations and in failed state-owned enterprises. That's who they care about. And they don't care about you. If you're black and you think the ANC cares about you, you are misinformed. Byron.
Yeah, I think that there's a little bit more to it, and some of it you might disagree with me entirely on,
Go ahead.
and that's okay. And it's I see this as actually many people will be like, oh, it's South Africa because South Africa is a shithole, and we got this and we got that, and you know we got all these issues, and we could it's just the ANC trying to be racist, and yeah, there's all these kind of arguments that people try to claim, right? Okay, but actually, there's a bigger issue at play, a much bigger issue at play, right? And so the actual issue that you see, again, completely my perspective, and you see it in England, is that of generational wealth. How do you make people wealthy? Quite often, generational wealth. How do you have generational wealth? Okay, let's use the example. Let's say something like, let me use the Jewish example, right? The Jewish example is, I buy the local corner shop. At some point, I give that to my son. My son has that. He uses it as collateral. He buys the bakery next door. He now has both of those. He gives it to his son. He now buys, the son uses both those places and buys the local restaurant. At some point, you can use all three as collateral and buy the local manufacturing plant that supplies food to all of them. There you go. You got an industrialist over 3 generations. White people had this for a very long time, right? In fact, Jewish people teach this to all their kids. There's a general thing in Judaism: just don't sell your property. Your kids should have something to inherit. Just keep it. That's why Jews land up usually with large inheritance funds, because there's this idea of inherited wealth. ANC doesn't want there to be any form of inherited wealth in South Africa, because what it would do is it would create artificial wealth. And what I mean by artificial wealth, actually, I shouldn't use the word artificial. I should say organic wealth. The ANC doesn't want there to be organic wealth transfers, because you see that the current mindset is that the only individuals that can get pretty far in this country are people that are helped by the ANC. They're the industrialists that the ANC empowered, right? And this idea of being able to just get up there and do things, the ANC don't want that. But then I've got to also be honest and say that we also seeing this in other countries. This also happens in, say, England. It just happens through different means. You buy a property in England, you work your whole life for it. When you get old, you've got to sell it and use all the money that you had there in order to pay for your care, in which case your kids very rarely actually inherit any generational wealth. So from my personal perspective, a lot of it actually has to do with wealth creation. Many countries around the world now don't want to see wealth creation. They don't want people to be wealthy in general. And unfortunately, in South Africa, the easiest way to uplift, I mean, they quite often talk about 3% taxes to go to this transformation fund and this tax to go to that. If you wanted to wholesale uplift the vast majority of poor people, give them title deeds. You'll uplift them like that. But unfortunately, that creates wealth, and they don't want that.
Well, nothing you said is in disagreement with what I said. I just didn't address the concept of generational wealth. I have no problem with generational wealth, and I think it's immoral to try to prevent people from generational wealth. You should be able to leave whatever you want to whomever you want, whether it's a charity or it's your progeny. That's your choice. And there's nothing wrong with building wealth. Wealth is wonderful.
Yeah.
Wealthy people tend to invest in economies and create jobs. But we always hear the nonsense, the British model, because you've got this classism in Britain. Oh, they're wealthy. They keep it all to themselves. They don't spread it around. That's horse manure. Most people who are entrepreneurs that build wealth, they reinvest it. They put it back in there and they get wealthier and wealthier, and they create more and more jobs. There are some people that live off their wealth and some who inherit it, but that's their prerogative. There are also the people that buy luxury boats that employ people that make $95,000 dollar yachts and $5 million yachts in the market that's very small but very profitable and employs people. So get over yourselves. There's nothing wrong with generational wealth. And the effort to steal that through inheritance tax, the effort to defraud people, I mean, it's absolutely insane. I find it immoral that they do this. And again, you touched on what I said there. There's a reason why the government doesn't want to hand over a title deed, because you generate wealth, and that's the dead capital. Can you imagine how much capital would appear on the books, the ledgers of South Africa, if all RDP houses were transferred tomorrow to the current occupants? We're talking about tens of billions, if not a few $100 billion US easily.
Yeah, but there's another fear that goes with that as well, which I'm sure you appreciate. Yeah. And this is actually something that Peter Groenewald talked about as part of the Freedom Front Plus, and that is if I gave an entire location or their title deeds, then if the local farmer wanted to come there, he could snap up most of the land at like 40,000 rand per thing. And what he said in his own speech is that a majority of these people want money, not land. And so what you'd find is that a whole development could get snapped up by a farmer, probably even a white farmer, for 4 million rand, and he'd have the whole thing, and everybody would have their 40 million rand. He'd just kick him off, or he'd become the landlord, right? So that's the other reason that they claim to not want to give it, because unfortunately they know what we know, and that's the land doesn't matter as much to some people as they claim.
Correct.
It's money that matters.
Exactly right. But that's fair, and Peter Groenewald is correct in making that argument. But you get the same argument that's used in the opposite direction to screw people. So people are granted land under the reform program. They don't know how to manage it. There isn't extension services or credit or tractors or training provided or fertilizer. They go out and they fail. And they're not happy because farming sucks. And so they're willing to sell it. So a white farmer buys it, and then we have the EFF claiming that was stolen land.
Well, remember, according to them, it is stolen land because it's the original sin. The original sin being private property ownership and title deeds. So when they talk about it being stolen land, in their ludicron, their language, they're correct. It is stolen land because there's a title deed on that, and they don't believe that there should be title deeds. Guys, you got to understand the lingo that these people use. Once you understand them, you can better deal with it and have less heart palpitations.
And you see where they're coming from. You know what to expect. Then you won't be surprised. And it won't surprise you when the EFF leads in a march that violates lockdown rules, which I don't care if they violate them, during COVID, and 10,000 people standing shoulder to shoulder, not wearing masks, screaming at the union buildings in Pretoria about, we want the Sputnik jab, we want the Chinese jab. All for theater. If you understand the language they're speaking, you understand why they do this sort of thing, and you understand why they marched in Phoenix to try to throw shade on Indians who are simply protecting their neighborhoods when the police failed to show up. Ronaldo says, end the argument, everyone but the Koyan San. Hey, go away, former member of parliament. We don't need you here.
He's just going to come here and tell us how he was a former member of parliament screwed by the DA. Yes. Hey, man, we heard that record. You should be like me. Create a single. You can release it. It's going to be Ronaldo's angry. You can just be like, the DEA screwed me. Just go for it, bud. Set it in heavy metal or something.
That's the next platter, the next LP, the next single dropping there. But look, Ronaldo shouldn't feel special. Lately, the DA's 3.5 million voters have been screwed by the DA. On Bella, on NHI, on EWC.
I absolutely love the DA at the moment. We will never bend the knee. How far does the knee have to go for it to be classed as bended? We just asking for a friend? Is it all the way to the floor?
I'm sorry there, Byron. We have a red line here for Bella. Well, okay, it's over here. No, it's over here. We have a red line for EWC. Okay, no, we don't. It's come on. I'll tell you what, they are really pissing a lot of people off, and it's an own goal. I don't blame them for going into a coalition. Because they hoped it would be the best of the worst possible outcomes, but they are neutered. They are castrated. They are eunuchs. They have no political power, and I said that when they joined it because they got not a single part of the security cluster, no finance ministry, no foreign ministry, no intelligence, no police, no military, no justice. All the levers that really run society and can oppress a society are under the control of the ANC. And, they are, this government wouldn't succeed without them. You take the other 8 parties in the coalition, it's not enough. You need the DA and the ANC to get to this 50%. And people don't tell me, but the evil alliance of MK. MK is not joining this coalition. Jacob Zuma would eat the ANC alive from the inside. Not going to happen.
Did you see all the kerfuffle on Twitter with Jacob Zuma's daughter?
Oh, yeah, I covered
Floyd
that.
Chavambu.
Yeah, I covered that. Groveling. I've got it right here. I've got the groveling apology from her. I thought it was entertaining, but it just shows you how dysfunctional.
I don't think she even issued that. I think it was issued by some person in the EFF party.
Chat GPT wrote this for her,
I have no doubt.
And then here's the actual MK letter they released, and It's damning on her. But look, this is not a real party as much as this is a cult. It's a cult of personality. And when Jacob Zuma dies, it'll fritter away. It's like the EFF. It's already falling apart. And when Malema's not there, there'll be nothing left of it. So
I'm going to be a smug bastard and say that 3 years ago I predicted the death of the EFF, and I also predicted exactly what they would get at the elections. And I predicted at the end of the last elections that the MK party would die before 2029 because Jacob Zuma is limited with time. Look, if the guy was 60 years old, then yeah,
Right, but he's 80, 81, yeah.
He's actually, I think he's older than 81. Like he's quite advanced, and his health ain't that great. So, I mean, on some days he Joe Bidens himself all the way through to the ice cream stand. So, you that's not your future politician. And unfortunately, people are voting for him. No one votes for Floyd Shivambu or his daughter or, whatever are the other clowns they got there. And there's loads of clowns. Like, nobody votes for them. They vote because they think Zuma is still the president of the ANC. And when he's not there anymore, well, what are you going to do then? Still have him on the ballot box even though he's dead? It's the only way you would keep the party relevant.
Yeah, I think you're right about
Mind
that.
you, what am I saying? Of course they're going to do that. This is South Africa.
Ronaldo said, did you see the logo where someone photoshopped MK where it has 100 Zulus attacking each other? No, I haven't seen that one. That would be interesting. And that's what's happening right now. They're attacking each other inside the party. They're firing this person. They're firing that person. They're investigating this person. They're removing members of parliament. Every day, it's a shit show in MK because it's not a real party. It's a cult of personality. And it's just, if it wasn't so sad, it would be comical. But you know what? They're not alone. The knives are out for John Steenhuisen inside the DA. Let's see how long he survives. And he's coming to America, apparently. I hear that he and Peter Groenewald and Gate McKenzie are coming here to lobby America. Good luck with that, boys. Have fun storming the castle. Because if you think you're going to come lecture to Donald Trump when you post tweets saying he's a truly disturbing person, that ain't going to float, buddy. Ain't going to float, John Steenhuisen.
No, you see, the biggest problem that I have with John, and again, I know John personally, and it's nothing I wouldn't say to John myself, but my biggest problem with John is I know him personally. And when I speak to him personally, he really likes Donald Trump. Really, really likes him. But when he goes and he does this whole DA thing, mate, if you knew the John, the real John...
if you know the John that I know...
if you knew the real John, he is so approachable. He is more like Trump than we are. Like, the guy... he's cool, collected, he's fun to be around, and then you get him in DA mode, and he's like, my name is John Steenhuisen, I represent the DA. The DA is a non-racist, non-sexist organization. It's so dull, and you just think to yourself,
Terminate, exterminate.
You just think, who the hell is this guy?
He's a Dalek.
This isn't the guy.
He's a Dalek, man.
You're just like, I don't know who this guy is. He's not the guy I was just speaking to. And then the camera goes off and he's like, back to one of the lads, and you're like, what the hell was that all about? John, to me, when he's an official persona, is just boring, to be frank. And so even his tweets, you think to yourself and you go, he probably wrote that because he thought that's what he had to write in order to fit in with, the ultra lefty part of the DA.
I've got to deal with something here. Sorry, we can look off John really quickly. I have to do an apology to Andre Bidke. Andre, I didn't see your questions. Sorry you had to super chat for a third time. Let me go back very quickly and address these. I didn't see it. We were chatting. I don't see everything. It doesn't show up in the studio sometimes. So Andre asked a question. I was deported for the exact reasons refugee status is now... What the hell is that? I can't see it. You were deported for refugee status. Andre, please ask your question again. You don't have to pay a super chat. I'll watch for it now because it doesn't show up here. I can't see. Let me see if I can see it. No, it won't show me. Oh, wait, here it is. I'm sorry. So Andre says, I was refugees now offered. You were deported for the exact reasons refugee status now offered. Well, okay, thank you for the super chat at 35 Rand, but that doesn't tell me anything. You were deported from where, when, for what reasons, by whom? From the U.S.? It doesn't help me. If BE affects you, you are eligible for refugee status. Well, based on the very thin guidance that we have from the executive order on who should get it, in theory, yes, if BE does affect you and prevents you and you're racially discriminated against, you should be affected. But we can't tell you that for certain until the policy is released. And so, Andre, please explain a little bit more about the refugee thing and how you were denied that because it's not there. Anyway, Ronaldo says, remember that Steenhuisen used to be the chief whip of Parliament for the DA. That gave the ANC and EFF slaps. Yeah, he did. He used to give him PKs all the time in Parliament. And now, during the State of the Nation address, let me roll the tape, ladies and gentlemen. Here is the DA caucus when Cyril Ramaphosa is giving his speech about job opportunities created, not jobs, and not telling us about the digital city that they promised 6 years ago, and telling us about the 940 billion rand infrastructure account. Here are the DA. Are you ready, guys? You ready? And here's John Steenhuisen when Cyril gives a little pat on the head about the jobs program. Here's John. Good Lord, give me a break. Anyway.
Yeah, so actually also one of Ronaldo's other comments, he says, I can confirm that. He's had over 100 interactions with John. He's just like one of the lads. Seriously, man. Like, when you speak to that guy one-on-one, it's one of the lads. When the camera comes on, my name is John Steenhuisen. He is the one that gets the job done.
I cannot confirm that because I've never hung out with John Steenhuisen. I've only had a camera in front of him. So I had some questions with a camera in front of him, so I cannot confirm that.
It's really bizarre, but like, you just think to yourself, like, what the freak happened? But you know, it's media persona. Like, I'm pretty sure that when the camera goes off with Cyril, he drops the whole, like, you know, trying to be reasonable, calm, and collected. I'm pretty sure he turns into a proper diva.
Well, it's no different if you turn the cameras off in confirmation hearings in the Senate, or if you have committees, which no press go to here. I've been to committee meetings in Congress, and the prima donnas who act for the cameras don't say squat. Some of them don't even show up, or they sit there and they chew on their cud, you know, eating a sandwich, or while people are talking and testifying, and then don't ask the question. When the cameras come in, it's full bullshit mode. It's the same everywhere. It's people play for the cameras. It's the same. I just watched the Netflix documentary on the O.J. Simpson thing. I didn't really follow that crap when it unfolded. I could care less about that situation, but this is a really interesting documentary. And you can see very clearly that Lance Ito's decision to foolishly allow cameras into the courtroom played a major role in why O.J. Simpson was acquitted, or said he was not guilty in that case, because people played for the cameras. And none other than Johnny Cochran. If the glove don't fit, you must acquit. You know what I mean? Oh my, give me a break. That's all playing for the cameras. So that's what people do. They play for the cameras, and that's what politicians do, and they do it very well. Some of them.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. But I got to say, and I think I think John's career's done.
So do I. I'm predicting he'll be gone within a matter of months. The knives are out for him, and I believe it's self-inflicted. He never should have accepted a ministerial post, particularly something like agriculture. He should have stayed to lead the party and guided it there, because he has a conflict of interest from a standpoint of being the party. I mean, you could be in a coalition with a government and oppose them. That happens. We have it in Europe. You have parties that, in Austria and Germany, that they don't agree on something and they publicly do it, dispute it. But you don't have someone that's a minister and also the party leader. That just doesn't make any sense, because he's got an obligation, a fealty to the person he works for, which is the chief executive. And that's in direct conflict with being the party leader. This was a stupid move, in my view. I never understood that. I don't know why that was done. There are plenty of people who are qualified to be the agriculture minister if that's what the crumbs that the ANC is going to throw you. He should have stayed the party leader.
Yeah, but you got to understand why they did that. John went off the agricultural ministry. Let's not pretend that he took a ministry he thought was pointless. He didn't. He took a ministry he thought would get him the Afrikaans vote.
Correct.
Because he's going after the Vietnam.
Oh, yay, a few 100,000 people bother to rock up. Why don't you focus on the 18 million that aren't voting, buddy?
I agree, buddy, but you got to remember that this is the same guy that got his knickers in a twist when the Freedom Front Plus started taking some of his votes in the Western Cape.
Oh, and they're not backing down. Did you watch their press conference in which they largely ignored expropriation? That press conference, and I did it live. The biggest argument from the DA was that, well, our feelings are hurt because we weren't told. And then when they got done telling us about their feelings being hurt, instead of telling us they would do a Section 80 challenge, constitutional challenge, or they would do a lawsuit, they didn't tell us that. They said their feelings were hurt because we weren't informed. We found out through WhatsApp and the media. And then what do they do? The purpose of the press conference? Well, the federal executive has met, and we're here to tell you about the Blue Machine. The Blue Machine will be the largest party, biggest vote getter in the 2026-2027 municipal elections. Yeah. And then you know what they said? Ivan Meyer gets up, goes, don't vote for small parties. The same dumbass move they made in the 2020 municipal elections, which cost the municipalities in the Western Cape. Pissing people off. Don't vote for smaller parties. Folks, vote for whoever the hell you want. If you're dumb enough to vote for the EFF, you get what you deserve. You vote for the ANC, you're dumb enough, you get what you deserve. Vote for whoever you want to. I did make an argument in 2021 in the build up to that because I started covering the election 15 months before it actually occurred and interviewed 8 political parties and 43 candidates before that election. And I did make an argument. Vote for the party you're comfortable with. However, if a party like the IFP and KZN or the DA in the Western Cape has a chance to get an outright majority, I'd suggest you vote for them so there's no fractious coalition and no dirty drug deals. Well, give me the deputy mayor or give me this portfolio or I'll collapse the coalition. That's the advice I gave. But you know what? 31% of you bothered to rock up for the vote and you fucked yourselves. Not the 31%, but the other 69% who are eligible. That's on you. That cross to bear is yours. And hey, look, I'm not throwing stones, Byron. 18% of people rocked up when I ran for office last year, and if more people rocked up who I met and said they're going to vote for me, and they were earnest about it, took the time to vote, I might have won. But anyway, so we got the same problem: apathy.
We do have the same problem: apathy. Absolutely. Anyway, Chris, it's actually now been nearly 2 hours. And I'm getting...
Yeah, you got to... that's fine, but I'm going to hang here a few minutes because I want to... With this Eggy Molders telling me it's fine when Americans give their opinion, but we cannot discuss facts. What the hell are you talking about? What is this? Some bullshit going on over in the chat? ANC will thrive in chaos. What we need is order. Who's going to stand up? Okay, that's fine. Okay, well, there's nothing wrong with that. So where does this comment come from? It's fine when Americans discuss their opinions. I don't know what you're talking about here. I'm going to hang around for a few minutes and wrap up after you go there, Byron. But thanks a lot for tuning in.
Cool, man.
I appreciate it. Go well, and we'll do this again soon because stuff's changing. Probably have to talk as soon as we get some guidance from the American Embassy.
I think we're going to have to talk when we get some guidance, and then people can stop telling me I'm talking rubbish. Even though it's like, I can't talk rubbish because there's nothing to talk about. But anyway.
All right.
You know, that's just what it is. Now, before I go, if you haven't already subscribed to the bloody stream, subscribe to the damn thing. Chris spends a lot of time on his damn stream doing work for you. Don't be lazy. Just push the subscribe button. It's free. If you haven't pushed the like button, push the like button. And if you haven't sent it to everybody in your WhatsApp group, you know, being that annoying person that sends them like YouTube things. My mom does that to me every day, some YouTube crap. And I'm like, Mom, I'm on YouTube. Leave me alone.
Is she sending you cat videos?
Absolutely. You know, sometimes she goes like, check this video. I'm like, that was me, Mum. Leave me alone. Right? It's like, yeah.
Sorry. That reminds me of the video where I did the 14 most frequently asked questions about the refugee program. And then 10% of the comments were people asking me questions which asked and answered in the video. Yeah, I know about that. Yeah, just like you. It was me, Mom. It was my video. Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, she's like, oh, I heard this person did a video about this. Did you see it? That was my video, Mum. Anyway, so I actually have that. That's genuinely happened to me. Anyway, if you haven't already subscribed to the bloody channel, subscribe. Chris isn't going to get to 100,000 on his own. Help him do it. Until then, cheerio. Go in peace.
All right. Folks, Byron Shepard from Morning Shot. Congratulations once again to Byron for getting 100,000. He really did a great job over there. He seems to be having trouble getting out of the chat. I'm going to let him disappear on his own. There he goes. All right. Well, the gentleman, Eggert, I don't understand your question, your comment there. Where did that come from? That's out of the blue. Were you referring to me? Is there some American in here that's in the chat saying something that disturbed you? Everybody's welcome to their opinion. It's called free speech as long as you're not abusive or racist towards others. We don't have a problem with that. You can disagree. He's playing a script. What is this? Something is up more than we know. It's time to come. His monstrous movements will make sense. Who? Oh, that's a man. That's not a. ANC will thrive in chaos. So I don't know what you're getting at, Ega Mulder. What was your comment? It just came out of left field. If you're still here, please share. It's fine. It is fine when Americans give their opinions. Can we not discuss facts? Well, Byron's not an American. He's a South African. I'm an American, and I discuss facts all day long. So I don't understand what that comment's about. I'm going to give it a moment here and see if he's still here. And if he's going to answer that. Nope, I don't see any response. Okay. I guess it was just a trolling comment, or maybe it's out of context. Anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit the like button or dislike button if you're so inclined. And thanks. The chat rate is currently 26%, so I do appreciate that. Thanks again for what you're doing for us. I wish this could go quicker. My business is hanging by a thread. I understand, Pretender. Hopefully we get an answer for you there. All right. Yep. Okay, guys. Thanks a lot. Please check out the video I did earlier this morning, quashing some rumors and nonsense in the media. It's doing okay, but it's not doing particularly well. I did it shortly before this broadcast. Has let me see. That one has 17,000 views. So it's trending right in the gray zone, the top of what my videos have been doing lately. But that one discusses about asking the question, why is the media so desperate to rubbish the concept of coming to America? That's not an endorsement for people coming to America. It's a statement of why are they doing this? They're misleading people. So, all right, guys. Marius Rautenbach, take care. All right, you guys hit the like button, hit the goodbye button, whatever it takes. And I'll catch you guys if something breaks later on. But it is a busy day for me. I've got my veterans organization meetings, which go from 4 p.m. until about 10 tonight. So I'll definitely be out of the net during that time frame. And you're all very welcome. Thank you all so much. All righty. And I'm going to close with this one here. You've probably seen this one before. Here's a slideshow with an AI song, which I love this song that I use on the channel. And I do have the license to use it. And with some images of places I've been and part of my life. I hope you find it interesting. I do this because a lot of people are new. They don't know who I am. So cheers. And have a good day. Be safe out there.
Wat kleurt hulle? Geen kop.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the highways, and on we'll turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go. Turn us to thousands, and we'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon. Turn us to thousands, and on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go.
This morning I'm sharing the stage with guinea fowl, and quite a few of them, as you can see. They're sharing the stage with guinea fowl and barking dogs in a residential area here in Somerset West.